The Bible teaches marriage is honorable in all. Marriage honors God, and God honors marriage. The Bible teaches that the essence of marriage is a covenant with vows that are binding.
I vow before God and our family and friends to humbly love, honor, cherish, and care for you with God's help. I promise to work hard for you and our family to provide our needs.
I will be quick to forgive and keep no record of wrong. I promise to be loyal to you only until we are parted at death or the Lord's return. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so will I, as your wife, be obedient to you in everything.
Hey you guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Monday, October 25th, and I hope you guys are having a really good day. You know who we haven't talked about lately? Duggar, Claire, and Justin. Justin and Claire. Okay, so a couple days ago, there was this post that was made by Justin, and everyone assumed that Justin Duggar was going to announce that they were pregnant because they were like, oh, we have a really big announcement and it's coming tomorrow. So naturally with the Duggars, because it's a announcement, there's only so many things that the Duggars announce. Weddings, engagements, babies. It's never anything like, oh, we got a graduate degree in physics. You know, it's never like, oh, we went to medical school or anything of the sort. It's generally like marriage, engagements, babies, courtships. So obviously they've been married for, 9 months now. And so everyone was like, all right, they are clearly pregnant. I mean, why wouldn't they be pregnant? Well, no, they're not. Okay, so yesterday they released a wedding teaser. So remember, they got married back in February, and they released a 5-minute video from their wedding, which showed highlight clips of their big day.
It was God's idea, His invention, and not man's idea. You've heard of designer clothes, designer accessories. This is what we call designer marriage. God designed it.
Jed and Katie actually did something similar to this, but Justin and Claire had not. They'd been keeping this sort of tightly under wraps, had not really put out very much about their wedding, haven't really said a whole lot. Actually, after they got married, they kind of just disappeared, and they just have been in Texas doing their own thing. Justin's, working in construction with Claire's dad, and then there's just life is going on as though it's nothing, and I think they just bought a house. So life in Texas is Texas. So Justin and Claire released this video, and clearly it's about Justin and Claire, which of course has the token, vows, which are very IBLP, very cultic about how, Claire says that she's going to be obedient to her husband.
I, Claire, take you, Justin Samuel, to be my wedded husband. Before our Savior and these witnesses today, I promise to give myself to you, to cherish you and care for your needs. I will be quick to forgive and keep no record of wrong. I promise to be loyal to you only until we are parted at death or the Lord's return. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so will I, as your wife, be obedient to you in everything.
And then Justin says he's going to provide for her.
I, Justin, take you, Claire Yvonne, to be my wedded wife. I vow before God and our family and friends to humbly love, honor, cherish, and care for you with God's help. I promise to be the spiritual leader of our home, guide you and our children in His ways. I promise to work hard for you and our family to provide our needs. I promise to give you a listening ear and to be sensitive to your heart. Today I pledge to you my all until separated by death.
So outside of their, very traditional IBLP vows, and David Waller was the officiant, and David Waller is an IBLP leader. He has done the youth programs for years. He is someone that has really lived by the IBLP rules and the cult. So, and Claire and Justin are still in this cult. They just don't live in Arkansas. They are down in Texas. And Hillary Spivey, her husband, I never know what his name is, the Spiveys, they seem to offer maybe a little bit more relaxed life than what he had up in Arkansas with the Duggars. So not everyone in the IBLP is as tightly wound as the Duggars. Not every single follower of the IBLP follows every single rule. They don't go by every single doctrine that's been written by Bill Gothard. So everyone kind of follows it differently. I would say Jim Bob, Michelle, they really adhere to all of the rules of the cult. So if you want to think of like what the cult person should be and how the patriarch in the family should be, that's Jim Bob. He is literally modeling the cult as it's been taught. The Spivey's are a little bit more relaxed, it seems. They let the girls wear pants. They're not as strict. It seems just they still have very fringe beliefs, but it's just not as fringe as the Duggars. So anyways, at the wedding, only weeks before Josh Duggar was arrested, actually 2 months, Josh was there, acting like nothing happened. Now, here's the thing that I think is interesting. Justin was married, and he had a bunch of his brothers as groomsmen. So he had for his brothers that were at it, he had James, Jason, John David, and Jackson. And then Austin, Forsyth, and then Claire's brother. He didn't have Joseph, he didn't have Josiah, he didn't have Josh, and he didn't have Jeremiah or Jed. So I don't know how the boys all have relationships. I don't know who's tight with who. I don't know what the status of their friendships are. But I do know that Justin and James and Jason are very close. And then I've been told that Jed and Jeremiah have always sort of done their own thing because they're twins and they're like closer to Joseph. So it could just be that those three are sort of out of the loop. But generally, in a lot of the weddings, Josh has been a groomsman, and so he's been left out of the groomsmen for Justin. Instead, the oldest brother that is playing the role of oldest brother is once again John David. Josh was not in Jed's wedding, and he also was not in Justin's wedding. So if that gives you any indication of sort of where Josh stands with his brothers, they might all still be in the cult, but they're maybe not all best friends with Josh. But Josh was seen at the wedding joking around. He had one of the kids on his shoulders at the family picture. He was throwing Justin up in the air. He seemed to be acting like he had no cares in the world. He was sitting off to the side while everyone was walking down the aisle with Anna. And it's just weird when you think of it in the context that there was an investigation going on at this point. We know that a month later, they spoke to and reached out to Josh. So we know that in March, on the 12th, they had already been in communication with the defense in this case because Carly Marshall was sending a document including an information calendar, a plea agreement, the waiver of the indictment, and all of this information, which she had attached in an email on March 12th. Their wedding was in the beginning of February. So this means that clearly Josh and his defense were in communication with the government during all of this, and they were obviously ramping up the investigation at this point. The biggest delay for this case was related to COVID. The reason why it took them as long as it did to get the charges was because of COVID. Courts were shut down, there was labs shut down, parts of the government were shut down in the very beginning of the pandemic, and that did cause a lot of investigations to get backlogged and delayed. And so by the time we got out of COVID, well, we're still in COVID, but by the time things started to open back up for the government, that's when they started working on things again. And we know that they did a forensic report in November of 2020, and then they did another report in February of 2021. And then by March, they were ready to talk about the grand jury indictment, talk about a plea agreement, and the evidence in this case. They sat down with the defense on the 17th of March. So Josh Duggar was at a wedding in February, and then one in April for Jed, and acting like nothing was going on. Literally acting like not a care in the world, everything's fine, joking with his little brothers, playing with the kids, totally normal. Now, a lot of you guys will say, well, Katie, what are you going to do? Just like you have all of this stuff looming over your head, would you really be acting differently? I think to me, it just it tells me that Josh has this means and way to act like nothing's going on in his life, to not take things seriously. I will never in my life get Josh's face out of my mind from the bond hearing. This was a man that was facing serious crimes, facing 40 years in prison, smirking, laughing, joking with the judge, laughing about the chairs he was on, having trouble with his connection, not really acting like it was a serious situation, more so not taking it seriously at all. And it was just weird. Like, when you are in court and you are facing very serious crimes, the last thing that I would be doing, would be joking around and acting like it wasn't a big deal. His reactions weren't just weird to me. It was widely reported in the media that it was just odd that he was smirking and acting like it was not a big deal. Like, he somehow believed he was going to get out of this. And that was how his arraignment was too. It was just really bizarre. So watching that, I started thinking, like, what is wrong with him? Like, does he really think that he's getting out of this? Does he believe he's innocent? Does he just think that everyone is stupid and it's just everyone else's fault? And then we started going through the defense, and I realized that he really does think it's everyone else's fault and he's the victim, which is really weird. But a couple months before all of this is happening, when he's under literally the lens of a federal investigators, he's like at a wedding and he's around kids, and you realize, like, what kind of safeguards were being put in place for Josh to not be around children? What kind of safety were the Duggars and the family placing so that Josh didn't have access to kids? They might not believe what happened, but you would think, knowing the magnitude of what he was facing, they would have taken more precautions so that Josh wouldn't be in situations where things might get dicey, or there could be a sneaking, like, oh, Josh was over here with this kid, or Josh was doing this with this kid. You just don't want anything to make it look like anything bad could be happening while he's under federal investigation. So in my eyes, I think it's odd that he's acting normal. I mean, it's good to see that the Duggars were happy. I also think it's interesting that he was left out of 2 of the weddings, and I just think it's, again, weird that he's around all these kids acting like nothing's going on. And then that just brings me back to what kind of safety is for these kids, and what did the siblings know about Josh, and did they know the severity of what was going on, and were their kids exposed to what Josh was doing, and was Josh doing things to these kids, because he literally cannot see any of the siblings' children or his siblings. I don't know. Josh acting like nothing is going on and acting like normal and just jolly, joking, it's just par for the course at this time. I feel like even if he was convicted, he might start laughing. That's just me, though. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.